Yo, big up, people. I just kind of wanted to go live because I was kind of like, I haven't even set the camera settings for this thing. Jesus Christ. That's okay, though. That's kind of all right. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's about the best I'm going to do. So basically, yeah, I wanted to go live because I was thinking a little bit about like the cost of a manager in terms of like how compared to players, compared to the cost, the expenditure that clubs lay out on players, when you look at managers, they're relatively cheaper per se. And considering the importance of a manager, as in, like, take for example, having Arteta right now versus still having, I was going to say still having Emery, but, having Emery and the players not having down tools and everything kind of had gone wrong, there is a big difference there. I think obviously Emery, I don't know, I need to actually check this. I think that probably Emery was paid more than Arteta, I'm imagining so. I mean, surely that's the case. If not, that's absolutely insane. But yeah, presumably he was. Um, so Jurgen Klopp is on. Cheers, guys, by the way. Jurgen Klopp is on a £45 million contract, which I think is the most expensive one. I think he's actually level with Guardiola. So yeah, they both get roughly 40, 45 million in their contracts, and um, that those two contracts will be sort of like 2 to 3 years. Obviously multiple years. Um, but just think about that for a second. Players like Mustafi, like Xhaka, they've cost a similar amount to what these managers cost, but in a more upfront way. So it really, for a football club like Arsenal, it really shouldn't break the bank to bring in a big manager. And that brings me on to the subject of the title of this stream, which is Antonio Conte. Now, I don't know what people watching this think, what other Arsenal fans think, but for me, Antonio Conte is the numero uno choice for Arsenal. It's a perfect fit for Arsenal, given his record of taking teams that are big teams that have slipped to like seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, and then taking them to the title multiple times here, abroad, in Italy, about to do it again with Inter. Um, it's the perfect fit. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And what's it going to take to bring him here? Because I understand that, it's going to be difficult for Conte to come here because he was the Chelsea manager and it's Arsenal. It's a big rival. It's another Premier League team. I mean, certainly, if I was a manager and I saw myself as, a globally successful manager, I would want to, kind of in the Mourinho sense, I would want to be successful in different countries. I think what these kind of elite managers, the kind of mindset is like sort of Pep Guardiola type mindset is, and Klopp mindset is to be successful in different countries for different teams. So that's not being successful with multiple teams in Germany, Spain, England, Italy, wherever. These elite level managers typically, I mean, it's not 100%, but typically they will manage one club per country. So, you know, this leads me to be a bit kind of like pessimistic over whether Conte would come to Arsenal. However, if Arsenal really put their money where their mouths are, or I think where their mouths are going to be, should I say, because at the moment it looks like Arteta is not under any pressure at all. I mean, Arteta is under pressure. The club is doing a good PR exercise in terms of and Arteta himself is extremely good at this kind of PR. He's very much a company man, as I've said before on this channel. It was really kind of evident when the Ozil situation with his like China tweet, I think it was, or social media post, sort of kicked off, because when Arteta did that the press conference that kind of immediately followed the fallout, the sort of initial fallout of that, he suddenly presented himself in all these kind of political ways and these kind of typical political mannerisms, and it was really disappointing because initially I enjoyed listening to Arteta. He did seem to have a good vision and a good positive sort of like outlook for the club and plan for the club, even though the plan wasn't specified. But he obviously, he came in and made it. The way that he was talking made it seem like he obviously cared, and the club needed to be back. He came in and kind of sort of spoke like the club it needs to be back in challenging for the title, essentially. And then, subsequent to that, all his management and all the results that we've had has led us to a even worse. I mean, like, technically speaking, I don't know if I can do the maths, but he's made us 25% worse, right? Because if the Premier League is my maths correct here? I'm live, so I'm maybe going to sort of like embarrass myself with my maths, but roughly 20% worse. What my thinking is like, we finished 5th under Emery. We finished, I think, 8th last season. I wasn't even really paying much attention at the end, much like this season. We'll get into the Newcastle game in a sec because, we'll get into that in a sec. But 5th with Emery, 8th and now 10th and possibly 11th with Arteta this season. There's 20 teams in the Premier League, so segment that into quarters. He's made us essentially a quarter. Okay, it's 25%. He's made us like a quarter worse than we already were. So that takes some effort. We saw today, and also in the Champions League, we saw Chelsea showing what they are truly capable of with that squad of players, because I believe that Tuchel has got them playing to the maximum, to the absolute ceiling that they can perform at. And Arteta hasn't got this team doing that. This team only does that when the chips are down, and really down, like way down inside. Proper screamer, way down inside. Absolute game of the season action. That's when the team turn up and perform, which is like so bizarrely ironic, because it seems like you can rely on them in the big games, but not for the rest of the games. I don't know how exactly to explain that, or if someone can explain that, I would love to hear that. But that just seems to be the way it is. So it follows that on Thursday, if this theory that I've talked about a few times now, and I'm kind of worried I'm bloody jinxing it, it would seem and to follow that we will do the job against Villarreal, and that's my prediction, that we will. Add 3-1 on League Gunners channel, so it has, that 3-1 is my prediction. I just worry about the team lineup. I suppose let's just get into the. Actually, let's just for 1 second, let's just talk a bit more about Conte, because I'll get into the Newcastle game in a sec. But Conte, honestly, he just seems to be the perfect fit, as I said before. I mean, this guy has some. I mean, he's kind of like a relatively. Obviously, he's to some degree a relatively newish manager. I mean, it's obviously been a few years now. I mean, he started at Atalanta. He got hounded out of Atalanta. I mean, I think the ultras at Atalanta were literally trying to sort of like actually trying to sort of like strangle him, like quite genuinely. Those guys are fucked up. But yeah, so he had a very auspicious start, but then 2 years later he's winning titles, so he's obviously got quality. And then subsequently to that, he's taken teams that are lower in that have dropped down the league back up to titles and to second place and this kind of stuff. This is an absolute perfect fit for us. And so given the fact that these managers are relatively inexpensive. Like, spend can we not sort of like articulate and sort out a 60 sort of £1 million contract, well, not sort of a 60 £1 million contract for somebody like a Conte to tempt him over here, because it's going to take a lot of money to tempt him over to Arsenal, because at the moment, let's face it, Arsenal is not a particularly tempting proposition unless you're someone like us who are Arsenal fans, or or anybody who's watching who might be a football fan and wants to kind of see a club that's fallen be returned to some kind of grace. Probably not if you're a Tottenham fan, but then I don't know. Let's not get into that. But yeah, it's crazy to think that we can't somehow do that, and it's also crazy to think that we went for the cheap option, given the fact that a manager is not, in the grand scheme of the reign of a football club, an expensive thing. We're not talking about spending £100 million on a player. The club will, Pepe is more expensive than, than the manager. So, in fact, Pepe is about like not 10 times, but it's probably about 7 times more expensive than the manager. That's pretty crazy. Smash the likes and subscribe, people who'll be watching here. Hope you've been enjoying some kind of insight from me. I'm just kind of like shooting from the hip and thinking about these kind of things. You know what I mean? It's interesting to think about. Like, Arsenal is such a circus at the moment. It's kind of like an ongoing episode of EastEnders. One thing I also wanted to mention, I'll get onto the Newcastle game in a sec, but yeah, I am proper Conte, man. I think he is the absolute bad boy. He's a proper don, like a proper don. And who else? I mean, other than the other don, which would be Ancelotti or Conte, but my preference would be Conte. Arteta, man, you don't know. It's weird that he doesn't seem to have pressure on him on his job, right? It's like, how can you not? Like, you're the manager of Arsenal and you're in 10th. Can you imagine? I'm not trying to defend Wenger here, but can you imagine that Arsene Wenger will finish 10th and what the scenes will be? Like, I want a Wenger out like any other sane person at the end of his reign. But if he'd have been 10th, the reason we wanted Wenger out was because we weren't challenging for the title anymore. Because we were accepting 4th as a trophy, we were just going for 4th. That's why we wanted Wenger out. That was only 3 or 4 years ago. 3 years ago, 2018, he was still in charge. So it's kind of baffling how we've got to this point that this experimental manager has taken us down to 10th, and yet there doesn't seem to be much pressure, or it's taken a very long time for a lot of people to start to realize that he's not the guy for the job. I mean, why we don't need an experiment, we need experience. And that's the kind of point behind the whole issue with the job at Arsenal. I just find it very weird that we go for the cheap option when managers themselves are cheap compared to players. I mean, how much was Partey? Let me just have a little look here. Thomas Partey cost, or whatever, transfer cost Arsenal. I swear it was like, I can't bloody remember, man. Thomas Partey deal to cost Arsenal 110 million. That's from Sky Sports on the 6th of October last year. That must be nonsense. So Arsenal, yes, so he was 45.4 million. 45.4 million, which is, so that's for what contract was that? A 3-year contract, something like this. Let's have a look. Shut up. Oh my God, I've got Hecky B giving an interview. Oh, Jesus. Hang on. Actually, how many years is the contract? Because, oh my God, there's so many adverts on this. This is pissing me off too much. There's way too many adverts. But basically, look at that on the surface. 2 or 3 years contract, similar to Klopp, 2 or 3 years contract, and not going to be 1 year, not going to be 5 years, but 2 or 3 years. And you paid 45 for Thomas Partey, and you paid the same for Jurgen Klopp. Would you rather have had a Jurgen Klopp come to Arsenal? Which one would be more effective? A Jurgen Klopp coming to Arsenal or a Thomas Partey coming to Arsenal? Because right now, man, it seems pretty obvious. But what can you do? Let's get into Newcastle, which is a game which is not necessarily pointless, but it's kind of pointless. One of the things that the Newcastle game could be useful for is to give players, oh, get that wine mustache. Is getting players that are. What are my speakers doing? Oh, never mind. That's fine. It's getting players that, like Tierney, hopefully some minutes, Aubameyang some more minutes. If I would start Aubameyang to give him minutes. He needs to have some game time, and I wouldn't blame Arteta for doing that. If he did get like some freak injury, then, but I'd rather he play for an hour and get some game time and get. It really is, a lot of it is about, a lot of football is obviously like the skill level or whatever, the fitness level, but psychologically, but also there's the pattern of playing. There's nothing that can recreate the pattern of playing regular Premier League games. So we need, or should I say, regular high level football games. So Premier League, Europa League, Champions League. Say you want about the Europa League, but it is comparatively and relatively speaking higher level. The Europa Conference, I don't know. I don't even really talk about that, but anyway. So yeah, I'm just kind of paranoid about my internet because the last time I did this, my internet started moving badly, and I don't have anyone here to tell me if the internet is shit or not. So I'm just kind of going to hope that it is. And if this fucks up again and gives me like shitty, laggy video, then I am just going to record stuff before posting and not do it live until the channel grows a bit more, because I mean there's not much point doing it live at the moment, but I just kind of like the idea of being live as opposed to I can stop if I record it, I can stop the video. If I pre-record, I can stop the video whenever I want if I'm not happy with something, but doing it live is kind of nicer in a way. It's a bit more raw, even though it's maybe not as perfect. Where were we? Well, yeah, the Newcastle lineup. Let's get back to the Newcastle lineup. I think Tierney will feature, probably for only about an hour or so, as well as Aubameyang, but that should be okay to steal them, because you can, you get your fitness comes back relatively quickly. But yeah, they do need. You can't just chuck them in. You can't just chuck Tierney and Aubameyang in from the start against Villarreal on Thursday. They have to have some minutes against Newcastle. So this is why the Newcastle game is. This is the importance that the Newcastle game has. It's not important in terms of the league or determining how the team is going to play. It's just important to give injured or like previously injured players minutes. So yeah, I think let's go through. I mean, for me personally, I would start Ryan. Let's go through the lineup. For me personally, I would start Ryan. I would start Matt Ryan against Newcastle. To be honest with you, it's a difficult one with Leno because we saw against Villarreal what a shot stopper he can be, and he basically kept us in the game. I mean, and I've been very critical of Leno lately, rightly so, completely justified. But we do need him to be fit. I do think he's a better goalkeeper and shot stopper than Matt Ryan, but also Matt Ryan is pretty solid. So let's stick him in against Newcastle. Let's have Cedric at right back. Let's have Luis, Gabriel, and Tierney if he's fit. This is the old thing, isn't it? If Tierney's not fit, you'd have to go Chambers at right back, Cedric at left back. I'm not having Granit Xhaka at left back. He grew into the game all right against Villarreal, but nah. But let's say that Tierney's fit for 60 minutes. We play him, and then we bring on. Maybe we shift Cedric over to the left, put Chambers on the right. But Tierney has to get minutes. If Tierney is going to play properly against Villarreal, he has to get minutes in the Newcastle game and put him on from the start. I don't really see the point of doing it a different way. What's that in my hair? Is that grayness in my hair? The hair's still quite dark, It's my birthday is coming up soon. I don't know if I should say my age, but that's not too bad. It's still pretty dark hair for the 80-year-old man that I am. I had a weird dream one time that I was like a 70-year-old, 75-year-old, 80-year-old. I woke up and it wasn't quite a lucid dream. I have quite a lot of lucid dreams, but it wasn't quite that kind of hands-on and perceptually stark. But I woke up. I dreamed that I woke up and I was in a bedroom and I was looking at like a mirror, almost like a sort of more women's style like makeup mirror. You just sit in front of the mirror and do their bits and pieces. It was that kind of thing. I remember looking at it and it was me, but like 50 years into the future, and I had like a comb over and no hair. It was weird. I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but that was kind of an interesting dream. I was like, wow, did I just kind of glimpse the future a little bit? Am I going to get into that portion of the future, and am I going to be like feeling deja vu? Anyway, let's not go down that road because I could talk a lot about this kind of stuff. If you want some videos on that, let me know, because I am perfectly happy to sort of discuss at length these kind of things, because lucid dreaming. I had the maddest lucid dream. Lucid dreaming, what I was going to say is lucid dreaming and sort of the more metaphysical side of things is absolutely fascinating to me. When I first came to London, magic mushrooms were legal, and we used to go to Camden and get them, and have all kinds of amazing like discussions and experiences, and if there's one quote unquote drug, because it's not really a drug, let's face it, or restricted substance per se that I could recommend, I would definitely recommend mushrooms, man. Seriously, everyone should have a little dose of mushrooms. A little dose, not a big dose like my mate Pete gave to, I'm name dropping here. I said Pete, I meant my mate Charles. I misspoke. Sorry, Charles. Yeah, my mate Charles gave to my mate Francis. Charles and Francis, those two crazy people. Yeah, he gave him 80 grams of mushrooms as a first dose of mushrooms, which is a mistake. I would not recommend giving somebody who's doing magic mushrooms for the first time 80 grams. It's not going to end well, and it didn't. But it actually ended in a lot of laughter, an insane amount of laughter, actually. Incredible amount of laughter, unending. So yeah, I mean, I guess it could have been worse, but Jesus Christ, let's not dwell on that. I was giving my team for Newcastle, wasn't I? So that's the back four, and so yeah, Xhaka, it has to be Xhaka and Partey. I mean, there's just no other choice. And then that's like, I think Aubameyang's fit. He's got to start. He has to start to get some minutes, and then take him off after 60 minutes or so. Then I guess you can really has to put Martinelli on for this game. Rest Pepe, rest Saka, rest Emil Smith Rowe. I guess Martinelli, Reece Nelson. I'm missing one last player, aren't I? I mean, I guess maybe Odegaard, because he's still, for me, Odegaard, since he come back from his injury, has not got quite back up to full fitness yet, or proper fitness that we recognise as the Odegaard that starts to pull the strings and all this kind of stuff. I'm not totally sold by the hype on this guy, but I do think he's a wicked player. Obviously, you kind of get that sort of sense when he, when he touches the ball, how he controls the ball, how he dictates play, and this kind of stuff. You do get the sense that he's a top level player. But since his recent injury, the last few games, he's sort of like a passenger, and I don't know if that's. I can only think that that's to do with fitness and kind of confidence. So give him another 60 minutes as well. I'll be making quite a few, like, as long as the game is going okay, I'll be making quite a few substitutions around 60 minutes, taking off Aubameyang, Tierney, Odegaard. Not that I'd necessarily start Odegaard. I wouldn't start Odegaard against Villarreal, actually. It'd have to be Emil Smith Rowe in that kind of role. We're moving up to like half an hour, man. Interesting how I can just sort of bang on and not realize how the time goes. Yeah. So I guess, that's the preview for tomorrow. I will be back after the game, which will be, I will squeeze a video in just before the Man United Liverpool game, because I'm definitely going to watch that. And I will do like a little reaction I'll try and do a reaction. Now I'm a bit more used to how to use YouTube. I can probably do a reaction before the game to the lineup. I'll do a reaction to the game before the lineup, and I will do a reaction to the actual game. And then, yeah, that will be it for tomorrow. So look forward to that. Yeah, slap the likes up, subscribe, share. Thank you for your support. I'm going to end it here. 27 minutes, 27 seconds coming up.